Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns. Hello and welcome to show number 55 of Keto Life Support. This is Kim Howerton. Glad to be with you. And today I'm bringing you a really special episode. I had so much fun recording it with my good friends, Robert and Crystal Sikes, also known as Keto Savage and Lady Savage, where we talk quite a bit about a subject that I've been touching on often recently and will continue to touch on because I think it's such an important topic and not being discussed anywhere near enough on the keto channels. So join us for this discussion of metabolic adaptation in our clients, in my own life, and then how we work with people to make sure that this is not such a big issue moving into the future. So take care and enjoy.
We are live. We have Crystal and Kim in the building. How are y'all doing?
So good.
You doing all right, Kim?
I am doing very well. Very, very well.
Good. This is going to be interesting because I got Crystal sitting across from me. Kim, you're in California right now, so other side of the states, but I think this will work out nicely.
Yeah, I think it will, with the one exception is I am terrible at not knowing when is the right time to talk when I'm on an audio. So I want to pre-apologize for my assumption that I will talk over someone at some point.
The same thing's going to happen to me, so it's fine.
It's all good. I can signal to Crystal because I can see her, but I can't signal to you, so we'll just have to wing it, I guess.
All right.
So there's a lot of topics. Mostly we're going to kind of talk about reverse dieting, all that good stuff, but there's two topics that have gotten a lot of attention in the past 24 to 48 hours, and I kind of want to just see what your initial thoughts are on the matter, if you're willing, Kim.
I am, but I have not prepared because I don't know what you're going to say.
I know, I'm just throwing this out at you left field, and I haven't really read all the studies either, so I'm kind of coming at this just with first impressions. One is liver is in the limelight.
Yes, it is. I even said it to my boyfriend last night. We were talking. I was like liver is a hot topic in the world. And he was like, that is the least interesting thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are your initial thoughts? I guess we can give the audience a little bit of context here. So liver, which has been hailed as the superfood of the century, is now the silent villain, I guess, because everybody's talking about vitamin A toxicity, especially in infants. So what's your thought on that?
Well, it's very topical right now. It's been a topic that's been on the socials, sort of like the number one and number two, people who talk in the carnivore community seem to be at odds. So it's a little rumble out there. Mm-hmm. My thought is interesting. So I am a good friend of Amber O'Hearn's, who's kind of like old school carnivore. She's been carnivore a long time. I'm also good friends with Ken Berry, as you are. And everyone has different opinions about how much liver to eat and is liver important and it's a superfood. And, so all these different people and different opinions. And it's very interesting. Again, not an expert on this topic at all. But what I seem to be hearing is the central argument is sort of one side is saying you can't eat too much liver. You could get too much vitamin A, but you can't get too much vitamin A from a whole food source. Whereas the other side is saying you can. Vitamin A toxicity is definitely a thing, but the side that's saying the pro excess liver is saying, but in those studies, all of those people got it from supplementation, not from real whole foods. Yeah. I have not done my own research on this topic, so I don't know. I know people who are very healthy that eat a ton of liver, and I know people that are very healthy that eat no liver. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I don't know. I know Amber has talked about in the past that, she's gone through periods of eating liver and not eating liver, and from her perspective, she does not know that it is, in fact, important on a carnivore diet. And she's my kind of go-to smart person on carnivore diets. And so I think with a lot of these things, like, the extremists are probably not the normal situation, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many people are actually eating pounds of liver a day?
That was my question.
Well, it's
Like, that
interesting.
seems abnormal.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I'm a fan of eating nose to tail. I'm a
Yeah.
hunter. I like using all of the animal. I like knowing that I'm not wasting anything. But at the same time, like you said, I don't think there's a massive population size out there that's just eating liver as their primary, caloric intake.
Right. Think about a cow, right? Like,
Yeah.
or an animal in general. Percentage wise of the things that you can eat by weight, what percent is the liver? It's
Minuscule.
like, I have no idea, but it's probably like 1%
Yeah.
or less.
Yeah, it's just weird because it's like I see all this division within the low carb community. It's like it's not even division amongst different dieting protocols anymore. It's like division within the low. I mean, there's another
Sure.
thread a while back about to avocado or not to avocado, and it
Oh
was
my
just
goodness.
like blows
yeah,
my
I saw
mind
that.
because it's like this is ridiculous. Like we're fighting about how much liver to eat or not eat right now. It's like anything in surplus is too bad for you. I mean, too much liver, probably not great. Too much water, and you'll drown. It's like, why are we arguing over these little details?
Yeah, totally. I think people like controversy, and controversy allows for social media posts, and I don't think it's actually any more complicated than that. My like common sense answer is we should probably be eating. If we were looking for some good advice, we can kind of look to nature and say, well, if you were in a tribe of people back in the day before, we had agriculture or animal, husbandry or whatever you'd want to call it, when you killed a cow, you ate the whole cow. But that means that for your family eating this cow, you were eating multiple pounds of muscle meat and a few ounces of organ meats.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. I mean, I don't dislike liver. I actually kind of like liver, and I'll go to town on some liver for a very short period of time, and then I often won't eat liver again for months. And I feel like that is a fine way to go about it. Like I'll have a whole bunch in one sitting, and then I won't eat it again in that amount for weeks, if not months. And I feel like moderation in that sense is totally fine. Like people get so extremist on to have it in surplus or not have it at all, and it becomes like this weird pendulum fallback system in which it just goes one way and then it corrects course and goes all the way to the other end of the spectrum, and it's just like so unnecessary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, I'm totally uneducated because I haven't read the study, but if you're telling me that like one of the controversies is that in infants they can get vitamin A toxicity from being supplemented with vitamin A, I mean, the reality is, like, has that ever happened with breast milk? Because that's what infants are supposed to eat.
Yeah, totally agree. The other, well, let's hear a thought from Crystal here. Crystal loves liver sheets all the time.
I don't love liver.
I don't either, Crystal.
I mean, I agree with Kim. It's hard because I have not read the study either, so I don't actually know. But I don't enjoy organ meats, and I try to place them in my life. So I think having about 1 or 2 ounces a day or a couple days a week is a really good option. But I don't know who in the world is eating that much liver to get vitamin A toxicity. That just does not sound appealing to me.
Yeah, and if somebody has like a specific genetic SNP that prevents them from processing vitamin A as efficiently as they should, I mean that would be like an extraneous issue. But I think the average person is fine to have some liver every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think just don't be an idiot. Like, just don't. Like, I mean, maybe it just seems weird to me because I don't really like liver, and maybe somebody is like, liver is the best thing ever, and I adore it more than anything else, and I just revel in it like it's chocolate. Like, okay, maybe that person might have to moderate their liver intake, but I don't think that's most people.
Yeah. The next thing, I feel kind of guilty because I'm just throwing these studies on y'all all haphazardly here. The other one is a recent study was published in, I believe, the Journal of Science, and it was all about how the carbohydrate insulin model is just, it pales in comparison to the energy balance model. This has always been like a raging debate.
Sure.
But that just got published, I think, like yesterday or the day before. So that's all the talk right now. And it's interesting to see. It's just weird. Like, I feel like there's these weird cycles that exist between the keto, low carb, carnivore community. They all fight with themselves, but then you have everybody outside of that community that's like constantly at odds with that community and trying to prove the other wrong. And it's weird because people only view things in their own bubble.
Sure.
Like a lot of times the people that are, devout believers in the carbohydrate insulin model, it's like it's all the carbohydrate insulin model. There's no other explanation. And the people that are in the energy balance model say it's all the energy balance. Nothing else matters. And it's like, I don't understand why people can't just say, maybe carbohydrates are not optimal to have as my primary source of calories. And maybe I should take some time and put some thought into whether I'm eating in a caloric surplus or a deficit based off of my needs. I feel like that is a very common sense, rational way to look at it.
Yeah, it's kind of nutty again to me. Like, it's to just have the hubris to imagine that, like, nope, my opinion is valid and no one else's opinion is valid because I concocted a study to prove my opinion, right? You can do that. Like, to think that somebody might say hormones don't matter at all is just ridiculous, because you can find example after example in the literature, like type 1 diabetics. You could feed them 10,000 calories a day, and if they're an untreated diabetic, type 1, right, so they don't have insulin, they will continually lose weight. They will then die, so I'm not suggesting that's a good strategy, but not from the calories you're feeding them, but from the lack of insulin. Whereas when you start to give a type 1 diabetic insulin and they're eating the same or less, they start gaining weight. So it's like, well, how could it all be about calories if these things exist? Or there are certain types of tumors or like pituitary tumors or other conditions where this happens, where it's like, it doesn't matter what we feed them, they're going to gain or lose depending on their condition. But on the flip side, it's not all about hormones either. It's both things. And I think anyone who's suggesting it's all one or all the other, like, just is trying to deny that the human is actually a pretty complex organism. And like, I don't know, like, why we have this drive to simplify everything, and we simplify it so much we just make everybody an idiot.
Yeah, it's weird because, like, I come from a family of scientists. Like, my dad's a scientist, all of his brothers are scientists. Like, I love science, and I made a post about this a week or two ago. I'm obviously very pro scientific studies, research, literature. Like, we need that to advance and innovate as a species. But it's this weird thing that's going on right now, in which, especially within the nutritional realms, that people are hanging their hats on like these, one-off scientific studies that more often than not look at rat models. They're not done based off of a quality controlled setting. I mean, it's just very strange how much emphasis these different studies are getting. And I mean, for every scientific study that points towards one thing, there's another study that points towards the exact opposite. And it's just frustrating to see people literally hang their entire existence on one or two studies and not be open to anything that's counter to those studies. Like, it blows my mind. People are funny.
This is how science has changed since I was a kid, or at least when I was idealistic and in school, right? Is science is a practice. And what I was taught was you develop a theory, a hypothesis, a guess about what's going on. And then what you do is try to disprove it, not try to prove it. So you're like, I think it's all about calories. I think it's not about hormones at all. I'm going to try and disprove my belief. I'm going to say, okay, can I conduct an experiment where it disproves that it's 100% calories? That's useful. But yeah, you can come up with 10,000 studies that prove, quote unquote, your theory by like not even manipulating is maybe a triggering word, but like by setting the parameters in such a way that fit your theory.
Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, like I said, I'm very much so pro, we need to be doing all that we can to learn everything that we can. But at the end of the day, I'm starting to get to the point where it's just like, I put a hell of a lot more emphasis on what I can replicate in myself, my clients, the people I'm interacting with on a day-to-day basis. Like if they're seeing success with it and it's like truly working for them, then I mean, I don't really give a damn what the study shows. Like if it's working for them, it's working for them.
Right. Like I'm going to believe, people before I believe theories.
Yeah.
But it really ties into something I'm seeing in my clients, and we can jump around a little bit, but I do see harm happening every day from these theories being sort of, like both camps. I see harm happening from people saying calories don't even exist. And I see harm happening from the people who think it's all about calories. So I think it's causing damage.
I totally agree. Protein's been in the news a lot here lately, all in a very positive light, which I'm excited about. Like I think protein is oftentimes underconsumed within the keto low carb spaces. So I'm glad that it's getting some attention for sure. I just hope that doesn't. I mean, it's weird. Like people see the benefits of protein, and they just automatically start detracting from things that are not protein. So like, oh, protein's great. Let's remove all carbs and fat. It's like, no, let's tap the brakes. There's sometimes where you need to have a little bit of a balance there. I don't know. I hope the news and the positivity showering protein right now yields a net positive and not this, pendulum swinging too far the opposite direction.
I just feel like there's such a beautiful balance in all of it that people just nobody's seeing it. Until you can find it within your own body, you don't know what the beautiful balance is. But once you find it, it's like maybe 2 years ago it was different for me than it is now. But kind of evolving while your body's evolving. If you're, lifting more weights, then your whole composition is going to change. So your macros may need to change. The types of foods that you're eating might need to change. But I feel like people are listening and doing what they're told rather than how they're feeling. And that's causing them to not see that beautiful balance for themselves,
Yeah.
Totally.
I can get that. So this is a good segue to the main portion of this conversation, which is kind of, what'd you call it earlier, Kim? Adaptive
Adaptation. Adaptive physiology.
Whoa, getting all kind of fancy on me.
I know. I have big words, big point words.
Well, kind of introduce that topic. So we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We just had a random phone call. The three of us were talking, and just some common trends we've seen in working with clients and whatnot here lately. So, in your words, Kim, what are you seeing? What spurred the need for this conversation?
So, apropos of what we were talking about earlier in terms of the sort of calories versus hormones issue, I run a coaching program geared towards stuck people. So people have been keto for a while and now they're like, I'm stuck. Nothing's happening. I'm not reaching my goals anymore. I'm not moving towards them. And so I get a lot of input on what's going on there. Like, what are you doing right now that's not working for you? And the thing that I was seeing is I get clients who are eating quite a bit who are stuck, but I also see clients who are hardly eating anything that are stuck. And so it's like, what's going on out there in the world? This is interesting. What's happening? And when I came into keto about 5 years ago, one of the things that I was told was that, that thing that happens in regular dieting where you they call it starvation mode, right? Your body goes into starvation mode, which I don't like as a phrase, by the way, but that's the thing that people talk about. It doesn't happen on keto, that it won't happen on keto because your body fat is being used as part of your energy. So even though you're only eating 1,000 calories in your mouth, right? Like you're only actually eating that, your body thinks you're eating 1,500 calories because of the liberated fat stores.
Yeah.
And the thing that occurred to me later was, well, that's happening on any caloric restrictive diet, right? Like that's like, if you're on a high carb calorically restricted diet, you are also pulling fat from the, you know what I mean? Like that math equation of supplementing your dietary fat or your dietary calories with your bodily uptake of fat, that will happen anytime you've lost weight. And so it's like, well, what's distinct? And there are, absolutely advantages to keto, 100,000% advantages to keto metabolically. I'm not saying that's not true, but what I am saying is I think it was a lie that was told to people that you will not lower your metabolic rate if you undereat on keto.
Yeah, that's a massive frustration for me. I mean, metabolism is something that I don't have any formal scientific studying in, but it's something that I've got a very close relationship with in doing bodybuilding competitions and being, in periods where I'm at a very high caloric intake and periods where I'm at a very low caloric intake, and in working with my clients and just seeing how people respond and picking up on certain patterns and trend recognition. Metabolism is incredibly important across the board, regardless of what type of diet you're following. And it's been very frustrating for me to see this massive influx of people chronically undereating, especially in the keto low carb realm. And Crystal, you work with clients too, and I feel like you've seen a lot of this also.
Yeah, totally. I primarily work with females, and it's heartbreaking how many people come to coaching and then tell me that they refuse to do my, what I ask of them because they're so afraid of gaining weight, gaining fat, and they won't allow me to help them to reset themselves, and then they're just in for a lifetime of hurt because they aren't going to get enough food. They're not going to get enough nutrient density. They're not going to get enough of anything with the little that they're eating. But it is heartbreaking to have call after call after call of just convincing people that it is okay to eat a little bit more, So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, when you see people that are, their weight has held stable or even increased, and they're consistently consuming less than 1,000 calories a day. And, some people eat very little and then have days where they're eating a ton. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, their average consumption across the course of, weeks on end are just chronically under-consuming calories, and their weight is, like I said, staying stagnant or increasing, and their body fat is certainly not going down. I mean, that's a bad place to be because you don't have the fuel coming in to be able to perform at a high level with your training, which could elicit some metabolic benefits, and you don't have any runway left to taper your calories. So, if you're consuming less than 1,000 calories, where else are you going to go from there? Less than 500 calories? You're literally consuming, the caloric recommendations for a 6-month-old infant is 675 calories or something like that. People are consuming as much as an
and
infant.
for a toddler, it's 1,200. A lot of these women are eating less than a toddler should.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's just sad. And I feel like, I don't know, y'all probably work with more females. Actually, I've got a lot of female clients too, but y'all probably work with more females than I, but I feel like there's probably more females as a demographic that are chronically undereating than males, but it's definitely in the male demographic as well. And I don't know what triggered this. I'm assuming it's probably the whole philosophy of, the calories in, calories out, it's all calories. If you want to lose weight, cut calories. And they'll see some initial weight loss in cutting calories, and then they won't reach their goal, so they'll just keep cutting calories. And the conversation is never around the benefits that come with increasing calories, so that's never even in their repertoire as something to do.
Right. I think one of the things the reason I wanted to sort of start off with the word adaptation or adaptive is the fact that I think it really helps to understand that metabolisms are designed to be adaptive. That is their job. Mm-hmm. If you look at metabolism, right, it's shorthand, it's what your body does with food, right? It's you take in food and then it turns it into energy and signaling molecules and all that good stuff. So it's that process. If there's a famine, your metabolism is what's going to keep you alive, right? It's going to turn down your metabolic rate. It's going to turn down various processes so that you won't die just because there's less food available. If you are in a surplus, if there's, a chance to eat more, it's going to adjust to that. Metabolism, people often think of metabolism as a thing, you could sit it on your shelf and it tells you burn X amount of calories. And there's no input, right? There's no information input into that. But there is, it's actually you can think of it as a circle. Information goes in and results come out. And so how you're acting acts upon your metabolism and vice versa. And so it's a loop.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it can go up, it can go down depending on external factors. It can go up and it can go down depending on your compositional factors. Like if you have more lean mass, that's going to require more energy demand in your body, and your metabolism will be higher by default as a demand-driven concept of having more lean mass carrying around.
Right. And other things, right? Like if you chronically undereat, it's going to downregulate your thyroid, right? So thinking about metabolism is actually where you're like, oh, this whole calories in, calories out and hormones don't matter thing is complete bunk, because your metabolism like involves these hormonal factors, right? So if you chronically undereat, your body will downregulate thyroid and especially conversion of thyroid hormone, because it's trying to slow your metabolic rate so that you won't die.
So for what y'all are seeing, just kind of in the, I don't know, like I feel like this is becoming a larger problem than it was. Maybe it's just because
I'm seeing it way more than I used to.
Yeah, and I kind of want to get to the root of that. Like, why is that the thing? I mean, the whole calories in, calories out concept, that's been around for a long time, so I don't feel like it gets all the blame. I don't know if it's because extended fasting has definitely been, given a halo, and people are just kind of combining caloric reduction with extended fasting, and their average caloric intake is next to nothing. I don't know what the main catalyst has been, but it definitely does seem that in working with clients over the past 5 years, the number of clients that I've had start with me that are chronically undereating at the onset has definitely increased.
Do you have any ideas, Crystal?
Yeah, I don't know why it would have increased. For me, I feel like the majority of people have been doing it for years, and they're just coming about the idea that it might not be working out for them. So for me, I feel like they've been doing it for years, but they're kind of starting to open their eyes to, okay, there might be some other options here. And that's kind of when I get them. And then I'm having to break it all down for them and kind of give them different ideas and walk them through it very slowly week after week, helping them to understand why their body is feeling the way that it is, why they do lack the energy, why, all of these things are happening. But I don't know why it would be so huge now. I do know, I mean, if you just scroll on social media and you look under fitness or health or whatever, you're going to see a lot of people having completely opposite opinions. But if you look in certain areas, there are very large names and they are very pro not eating very much. I've been so saddened by some of the females that I follow personally. I don't know them personally, but I follow them. And then I watch a full day of eating and they actually tell you how much they're eating. And I'm like, there are literally millions of people watching this right now. Why is this okay? And I feel like it's taking a lot more of us, but maybe we don't have as loud of a voice, but people are starting to hear what we have to say, and that you don't have to do that to look a certain way or to be a certain way. You can actually do the opposite and have benefits. But I feel like people's eyes are just opening to it, and that's just what I've kind of seen from my side of things.
Yeah, I think there's two things at play. One of which is, and I'm not discounting men's experience at all here, I just have the woman's experience, so other people can weigh in, and I certainly acknowledge and believe that men have eating disorders, men have issues with their weight. I'm not discounting them. Mostly I deal with women, so that's a perspective I have, that most women I talk to have been on a diet of some kind since they were preteens, and one of the most horrendous thoughts to them, it feels like it violates their identity almost. It's like telling them they have to change their religion, is the idea that weight loss shouldn't be the first thing they think about when they wake up in the morning and the last thing they think about when they go to bed, and that it should be their number one priority, and that gaining weight is, the worst thing that could happen and losing weight is the best thing that could happen. And in that, they are just always restricting and less is better. I grew up with a mom who, I remember her saying this to me when I was a kid. She said, I feel like a better person when I'm hungry.
Yeah.
There's this culture around dieting as important. And I think what Crystal talked about earlier, there's this clutching fear at the idea of eating more, at the fear of gaining weight. And so I think that's been going on for decades, if not centuries. But then on the other side, I actually think there has been a little bit of unintended harm from some really good people in the keto community who focus on calories don't matter and it's only about hormones. And I certainly, if I have one-on-one conversations with these people, they make a lot of sense. And they, it's not, I'm not saying the problem is them. I'm saying problem is maybe how some people have interpreted what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And they never seem to interpret it as saying eat a lot more. They interpret it as saying, I can eat as little as I want to. I can validate my fear of eating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And I do also have to say, with what you said about, men and women, I feel like I also speak a lot for women because, again, I also primarily work with females and I'm a female myself. So I generally kind of gravitate towards that. But I do agree with that. I just had to throw that in there real quick.
Well, it's interesting because when I first started lifting, guys are interesting because a lot of guys just want to get jacked and yoked and all these, huge. So they see the scale go up, and that's oftentimes seen in a positive light. I remember when I did my first, quote unquote bulk, I'd be excited to see the scale tick up every single day. Little did I know I was just getting super fat and I was delusional.
Right.
I realized that after the fact, and that was not a good thing. But I feel like a lot of times guys come into it initially with just this intention of getting as much muscle as they can, and they're kind of delusional as to how much of that weight is actually muscle versus body fat. So it's not always seen in a negative light for guys to see the scale go up. I feel like females as a whole are starting to look at having musculature as a good thing, which is super exciting. I mean, I personally think females that have muscle on them is more attractive than ones that do not. I feel like you have more shape, you have more symmetry, more proportion. I mean, you're going to function much better from a longevity standpoint, and I feel like that's becoming a positive, which is good to see.
But with that comes eating more food.
Yeah, with
eating
that.
A proper amount of food, I should say.
Yeah,
women actually, I agree. They want to be more muscular, but if they step on the scale and they weigh 2 pounds more, they're going to I'm not saying every woman, but on average, they tend to flip out and not make the assumption that you said, that it's muscle.
Yeah.
Or water.
Yeah, I just did that the other day, actually. I told Robert, I was like, oh, I'm just I'm a little bit heavier than I want to be. And he's like, I'm sorry, did you just hit a PR the other day? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, then are you gaining fat? Are you gaining muscle? Break it down for yourself. And sometimes I have to be kind of snapped back into my spot, my place. But it's a hard place to be. I mean, just to kind of constantly have that doubt or that wonder. And I love the scale. I think the scale can be a really useful tool, but when you're overthinking about it every single day, and I mean, there was points where I was weighing myself literally several times a day, like the scale was going to tell me I am beautiful or something. 3 times a day. You don't need to weigh yourself 3 times a day. You can weigh yourself every other day or even a couple times a week or what. I mean, never if that's not something that's a concern of yours, but it's funny how that. It's not funny, but it has control over so many people.
Yeah, I feel like it's I totally get the perspective that says throw your scale out the door. You should never, live your life by the scale. The same people oftentimes say the same thing about tracking macros, eat intuitively, don't worry about that. My argument is, look, that's the scale is just a tool. It's not emotional. It shouldn't be emotionally tied. It's not trying to pick a fight with you. It's just telling you what your relationship with gravity is. Use that information and stay on track, adjust accordingly. I mean, just simply use that data and figure out what you need to fine-tune and dial in based off of your goals. And the same is true with macros. If I'm not trying to change my weight, then I don't really weigh in as much. If I'm trying to change something, then I'll weigh in regularly because then I can adjust on the fly as needed. I feel like that... it makes sense to have a healthy relationship with the data you are receiving. If you are tracking metrics that indicate that you're moving in the right direction, and then you can, compare those to the scale weight, to composition scans, to the volume you're lifting in the gym, those are all very relevant metrics that you can use to rest assured that, hey, things are moving properly even though the scale weight is increasing.
Right. Yeah, they're tools. And I think, but I get the emotional attachment to some of these things and it's very human. And I think to circle back to something that Crystal is saying, one of the things I'm saying to women and men, but again, mostly the women are listening. And Crystal is saying is hey, I know how to fix what's going on, or I'm pretty sure I know how to fix what's going on. Here's what it's going to take. And then I like present like, you need to stop what you're doing and like, eat more for a good deal of time and get off the diet train. And we're going to make some adjustments. And hey, we can actually fix this thing that feels broken. And this is actually good news. And a lot of people are like, I can't do that. I just can't do that. And do you guys know the Stephen Covey Saw story?
I don't know the story. I know Stephen Covey.
The parable. So there's this story in his books, which is, this is my version of it. I know ownership of this story. Is you're walking through the forest and you come across a guy with a saw and he's trying to saw down a tree. And you're watching him for a while and you realize like he's not getting anywhere. Like the tree is like barely has a paper cut, and it's like back and forth and back and forth. You see this guy like working so hard and you're like, man. And then you like walk over and you look at the saw and you realize like the saw is dull. Like there is no bite in this saw at all. And so you say to the lumberjack dude, you say, hey, have you thought about sharpening your saw? If you stop for a little bit and like take the time to sharpen that saw, it'll probably cut this tree down a lot easier. And the lumberjack says, I'm on a deadline. I cannot stop. I have to get this tree sawed down. And you're like, yeah, but it's not working. So you're going to miss your deadline. It's not going to happen. And it was like, well, but I cannot stop because if I stop, this will not happen. And you're like, well, right. So that kind of is the impasse that I find a lot of people at.
I agree. And I have one question. When Crystal and I do eventually have kids, would you be able to do like story time with them? 'Cause that was just beautiful.
Auntie Kim will hop on Zoom for story time.
Perfect. No, I totally agree. I mean, that's a very fitting analogy because if people like there's nowhere left for them to go at that point. Like if they've chronically under eating, there's no calories left in which to manipulate. And they certainly can't build muscle at that extreme caloric deficit. They're literally bottomed out. The longer they stay in that phase, it's going to have a compounding negative effect on them recovering from that phase. Like their best option is to go the other way.
I absolutely loved that story. To me, it just broke it down in such a simple way to explain to other people that I need to like go read that. But I feel like by the time people recognize that they're in this place of I don't know what to do and nothing's changing, they have kind of gotten to the point where they are just so unhappy with themselves and where they're at that they aren't willing to take the time and energy it takes to heal and recover and allow your body to feel good again before you can see the benefits that are going to come after. But the benefits that come after are not going to come unless you take that step back. And it's so very hard to explain to people. I mean, even my own family, they're just like, why would you have me eating so much food? I'm like, I'm not going to throw you in and make you eat all of this food. It's a slow, gradual transition, and it will make sense, and your body will slowly start to thank you. And I wish that I could just hop in everyone's head, just say okay, and like let them see a little bit into the future of what could be if they just took a step back, stopped focusing on the way that they were looking and the scale and the all the things that make them unhappy about themselves, and just show them like, look how healthy you're going to be. Look how much happier, and the weight may even fall off. The inflammation will likely fall off if you start to do these things and actually give your body what it's been craving and needing all of these years.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of coaches either don't know this or they're not familiar with it. I mean, like macro coaches online are a dime a dozen right now. I mean, they're everywhere. And I feel like a lot of them lack the perspective of knowing about a reverse diet. But there are some that, I mean, simply they don't offer this as an option to clients. They'll simply take the client's money, slash calories, another 200 calories, and then hope that they drop a few pounds. They're just contributing to the detriment of the client, because as the three of us can certainly attest to, it is a very hard sell when you jump on an initial client call when they come to you wanting to lose weight because they haven't been able to lose weight for years, and you have to say, all right, let me tell you what's going to happen. You need to increase your calories. You're probably going to gain some weight. You may even gain some body fat. You're going to have to do that for like 6 months or a year. Like, you tell the client that when they jump on that initial call with you, and that is a very hard sell as a coach. And not no coaches, but most coaches probably aren't going to do that because the clients aren't going to want to work with them. So they'll just take their money, drop calories further, and then send them on their way. People need to have that conversation. Coaches need to freaking cowboy up and have those hard conversations, knowing that it may come with them not getting that next client paycheck, but they need to start contributing to the overall health of the community, and you're not going to do that by continually under-eating.
Totally. Yeah, there's a lot of harm being done out there in the world. And I will admit, like, early on in my coaching career, I probably caused harm believing the things that I'd been taught and continuing to discuss them as if they were true before I really did the work and the research to get a deeper understanding of what's really going on. I think all of us, we have phases in our lives where we believe one thing or another. But the reality is, I see so many clients who come to me saying, yeah, I went to a coach. They gave me these macros. I wasn't losing weight. They gave me these macros. And I'm just shaking my head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's very, very frustrating. I want to end on some hope here. So, like, can we all cycle through and, like, with someone? So I guess we could all probably attest to what, a good candidate for somebody that would need to reverse that would be. And I'm assuming that's going to look something like, consistently eating sub 1,000 calories for, weeks, months, even years at a time, not being where they want to be, not feeling optimally, not hungry. A lot of times people will say, I'm only eating this much, but I'm not hungry. Yet they don't seem to realize that, hey, when you start increasing calories, your hunger will actually ramp up, contrary to what you would think. So that would be a typical, clientele that would benefit from a reverse diet. So, Crystal, you want to start with some, or Kim, ladies first, one of y'all kind of talk about what you would encourage somebody in that situation to start out and the path they should head on?
Yeah, first, I would like to say it's not always sub 1,000 calories. I want people to know that even 1,100 and 1,200 and even 1,300,
even 1,500,
can be extremely low depending on your activity, your lifestyle, your hormones, your all of those things. So even if you are, lower than 1,500-1,600 calories, that can be extremely low for you. If I were eating that, my body would definitely let me know that I was starving. Not literally, but I was, it definitely would be not optimally running. So I just wanted to throw that out there too, that it's not just people who are eating under 1,000 calories. It is just knowing that you're optimally eating for your body.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose like everybody is going to be very different in that regard. But when I say, like 13, 14, 1,500 calories, like that's typically where I'm taking clients to on the very tail end of a cut. And then they only stay there for a very finite period of time. Then they reverse up from that. I was kind of thinking, because I was jotting down some ideas on just broad stroke windows, healthy windows for the majority of the population. And I feel like the majority of the population, of course, you're going to have people on either end of that bell curve. The majority of the population would probably need to be optimally somewhere within that 2,000 to 3,000 calorie window. Like somewhere in that range is healthy for 80% or more of the population, I feel. Yeah,
I think if I were to suggest a couple of things, one would be, no matter who you are or what you're doing, get active. Go on a walk, do something. I hear a lot of the time, I have a very petite body, but I just have this extra weight. And, you do have to do something with what you're eating. Becoming active or resistance training, building up muscle will allow you to not only know that when you're eating, you can eat more. I feel like when people know that they're being active, they're almost more okay with eating more. So if becoming active or going on a little walk in the middle of your lunch break or whatever is helpful for you to kind of get past that mental part. Yes, you're going to be burning more calories. But if that is what's going to help you to be able to eat more, I would go for that. And then, get someone that you can confide in. It doesn't have to be a coach. It can be, whoever who's going to understand and get what you're about to be going through, because it's not easy or fun. Sometimes it can be really fun if you take advantage of the food. But get someone that can walk through this with you and help you to understand that when you do, or maybe if you do have those moments of doubt, that they are there to back you up and say, hey, just like Robert did to me, hey, didn't you just hit a PR in the gym the other day? Didn't you, weren't you feeling so good the other day? You had so much energy you didn't even want to go to sleep. So get someone who's going to actually, slap you upside the head when you need it.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I think I want to point out just a few stories. Like for myself, those of you who have been following know this, but I'm just going to mention it, which is I ended up doing a year-long reverse and then maintenance period. And that was really necessary, both from a mental and a physical perspective, I think. And at that point, I was able in the next year to lose 30 pounds, whereas I'd been stalled and gaining weight for the 2 years before that. So, just from my perspective, it really made a big difference, both physically and mentally. And then I have a client, like I can think of right now, who just ended her reverse. No, she just ended her cut after a reverse. So she reversed up to about 1,800 calories, where she'd been eating more like 12. And in that, this is unusual, but in that period, she didn't gain a single pound. She had some fluctuations like a normal person, but some people do gain a couple of pounds. Most people do, but she didn't actually. But then she decided it was time to go through a cut again. And she dropped 15 pounds. Like it was she used the word easy. And she's like, I've never had this experience. I've never had this. And she now knows it's time to go back into a reverse, because she's like, oh, I see how this works now. She has hope for her future. She believes this can actually be a pattern that she can sustain and keep up, rather than just the feeling you get when it's not working and you just start to lose hope.
Yeah. There's got to be, like cycling through these different phases is what makes body recomposition sustainable. Like you have to have the yin and the yang. You have to have the cutting phase and the building phase in order to really maximize either phase. Otherwise, you're just kind of knocking your head against the wall. Like when people come to me and they've been chronically under eating, I'll oftentimes have them, at least consume, like bump up their protein pretty quickly, so they're at least consuming, 1 gram of protein per pound of lean mass, so they're not muscle wasting anymore. Mm-hmm. And then I'll start bumping up dietary fat so that we can get their total caloric intake up. And I do that pretty gradually. Nothing is drastic. Like you don't want to go from chronically eating 800 calories to all of a sudden eating 2,000, because that's not going to be fun. But if you just gradually bump that up, 50 to 75, 100, 150 calories a week, depending on the person, and then do that over the course of several months, and then stay at that higher intake for several months or even a few years, their body's going to be incredibly more responsive the next time they do transition into a cutting phase. It's going to be more enjoyable too. Like they're going to be in a primed position to build more lean muscle mass. And if somebody's chronically under eating and they're not at the body composition they want to be at, and they're not, maybe they're willing to increase calories, maybe they see the benefit in that. One, like Crystal said, one of the main things they can do is incorporate some resistance training, because like we said at the beginning, the more lean muscle tissue you have, the better your metabolic rate is going to be anyways. And then with the increase in calories you're consuming, you're going to be able to put those calories to use and ideally partition it more towards adding more muscle as opposed to adding more fat. And that's just going to bode well for them on all fronts.
Yeah, I do want to also add that a lot of people don't recognize that when you do reverse diet, when you do slowly, as Robert was saying, slowly increase those calories, when you also decide to go back into a cutting period, 6 months, a year, however long you decide to reverse and maintain that, when you do start to go back down, it is not a drastic cut. You do not cut your calories back to where you were a year, 6 months ago, you do a slow and gradual decrease of calories or macros or whatever, however you're manipulating it. And that is going to help preserve it and preserve your hormones and your metabolism and all of that, keeping it healthy and letting it go through a easy transition rather than like, I'm going to remove 500 calories overnight. That is going to be one of the worst things that you can do to your body. But also what you will recognize is that when you go down to cut, especially if you're someone who is working on building lean body tissue, is that you will not have to go as low calorie. I mean, at one point, maybe you felt like you were at 1,300 calories and you're like, I'm still not losing weight at 1,300 calories. Well, you reverse back up to over 2,000 calories, and the next time you cut down, you may only have to go to 17, and then you reverse back up. You just don't have to go as low. You don't have to go to that place that feels horrible again and feel like you are just constantly hungry, constantly feeling terrible. There are things like incorporating refeeds that you can do and things like that.
Keto refeeds.
Yeah, keto caloric refeeds, yeah. There are things that you can do, but I think it's wonderful to know that wherever, if anyone's listening right now that is currently under eating, is that you may never have to eat this little ever again. You will never, but you have to do the first few steps, and the first few steps are taking a step back, recognizing what's better for your health and not what's going to be better for your mind in looking at your body, and knowing that it's going to be better for you in the long run, and that you never have to go super, super low to obtain the goals that you're looking for, and that the more you do this, the less you have to sacrifice.
Yeah, it's really important to be excited about whichever phase you're in. Like, people just want to look like a magazine cover year round. That's not really realistic. It's not optimal, especially if you're trying to, you're going to build more muscle if you're in a surplus anyways. So rather than being excited about looking super lean, be excited about sacrificing some of that leanness, but seeing the opposite end of the spectrum with significant improvements in your strength and your endurance metrics and like your ability to move more freely. Like there's a host of benefits that come with the other end of the spectrum as well. And I feel like the more people are excited for each phase and maximizing the opportunity that they are in that phase, it's going to be better all around. So many people start a reverse diet and they automatically feel a little fluffier and they just want to go right back into a cut. But if you have something that's exciting to you, that's appealing to you, that gets you ramped up about starting the day in a surplus, that makes it much more sustainable as well.
Yeah, and the market that I work with is a little different in that they're not as athletic, right? They don't work out as much. They don't lift as much weight as yours. And so I just want to point out that while this reverse cut, situation that is more common in the bodybuilding world, and I think you guys have a really unique perspective in the keto world on it, in the non-bodybuilding world, it's like unheard of to talk about these concepts, and they still matter. Mm-hmm. Like even if you're not a competitor, even if you're barely working out, these concepts still apply and are important. And I want to speak to like a broad population to say these central realities of bodies are still true. And, we all could use more muscle, and we all could use these things in a way that fits our life. And so from where you are to where you're going, it matters where you're starting from. Like Robert's starting point is not my starting point, is not your starting point. It's always just about advancing where you're starting from.
100%. Could not agree more.
So you guys just talked really eloquently about the physical gains you can get during a reverse and maintenance period. I want to talk about the psychological benefit, sort of what I talked to earlier, not to be too soapboxy, but I think there's harm. There is real harm that comes from living your life feeling like you would be better if you were thinner.
Yeah.
Like that's your central thought. You would be better. You would be more attractive. You fill in the blank, but really better. You would be a better human if you were thinner. And I think there's real intense benefit to being able to say, I'm not trying to lose weight right now. Like crazy as it sounds, like that it's okay to say that even if you're not at your goal weight. whatever goal weight is, right? You still objectively in your mind have body fat to lose, but you can say, I'm doing something right now for my health that in the long term will put me in a better position, but I don't have to spend every second trying to lose weight, that I'm allowed to work on this long term. I don't have to be like short term constant panic.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it kind of goes back to the whole yin and yang thing. I feel like having that psychological disconnect from trying to lose weight and see a lighter number on the scale is incredibly liberating. I wouldn't want anybody to take that, and run with it the opposite end of the spectrum and say, let's glorify gaining body fat. You've kind of seen that shift occur in recent times too. So I wouldn't recommend that. But yeah, absolutely 100%. Taking some time away from making weight loss the primary focus is incredibly healthy.
Yeah, that is a huge thing. I am so glad that you brought that up, because there is a humongous shift in your mental outlook on yourself and your life, and even the amount of stress that you put on your body and yourself. When you overthink about things like that, you don't even recognize the damage that you're doing just by constantly putting that pressure on yourself. So I absolutely agree. I mean, even the last couple of years for myself, people will ask, because people do that. What's your goal? What are you doing now? What's your goal? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to? And it's like, no, I'm just living my healthy life. And that is such an amazing feeling. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because there is definitely something to that. To just saying like, no, I'm just trying to be healthy. I am just doing me, eating well and feeling really good.
Yet it also brings in the thought, which is, I think you guys would 100% agree with, that how much body fat you have is important, but it's one component of your health. Mm-hmm. How much muscle you have is a separate component. Like, there are all these different things that matter. And if the only thing we ever focus on is fat loss without considering, micronutrient ingestion, metabolic health, body composition, including how much muscle mass we have, how we're sleeping, right? There's all these things that matter. And if we just keep pushing one lever by itself, totally separate from all the other health levers, we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it should all be viewed collectively as opposed to just any one singular unit. Kind of what we were talking about at the very beginning of the podcast.
Right.
Totally agree. What else, ladies and gents? I guess just ladies.
Well, I will bring up a study for you to look at for next time, which is Tommy Wood, if you find him on the socials, posted. He was involved with something that came out, a paper, I think, recently, sort of bringing up the problems with discussions of gut microbiota. Mm-hmm. You know how so often people will point out in the sort of more mainstream, like, oh, you need fiber for your microbiome, or, oh, you need to eat the rainbow because XYZ. And this paper came out essentially saying there are a lot of problems with that, and there seems to be a lot of benefit as well to looking at things through maybe a high-fat or ketogenic lens where the rules are different. It's not really like a definitive paper in any way, but it points out the holes in the arguments of people who are essentially saying that keto or carnivore are harmful.
That would be really cool to
I will
read,
definitely check that out. And you said it's Tommy Wood. If I just Google him, I'll be able to find it?
Yeah, you can look up Tommy Wood, just no S, just D.
Awesome.
I'm really excited about that, because it's kind of just like separating the two and saying like, this might be better for the people who are doing this. And
right. Yeah. Right. He kind of points out like, well, what's the problem with like looking at mouse gut, compared to like human gut. Anyway, so it's more of an opening the door paper than a like closing the case, but it's a good start. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'll check it out for sure. I guess this is going to go on our platforms, our different platforms. So, Kim, where can people go to find out more about you?
Well, you can find me at kimhowerton.com. And on all the socials, I'm the Ketonist, which is TheKetonist.
Beautiful. Crystal?
I have ladysavage.com, and on Instagram, I am the.lady.savage. And I do all the rest of my stuff with Robert, which is, he's going to tell you right now.
I am at ketosavage.com, and Instagram is Keto Savage and Live Savage. So yeah, that's where I'm at. We'll have to do this again sometime. Every time we talk, I feel good about it. Like, I've got utmost respect for you, Kim. So anytime you ever want to do a deep dive on any given topic, just let me know. We'll do this again.
All right, that sounds excellento.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining.